My name is Marlena, I'm 28, and I thought I knew my family until last Tuesday, when a single photo shattered everything I believed about love, loyalty, and blood ties. The picture showed my parents, siblings, aunts, uncles, and cousins all gathered around their brand new dream house, the one they claimed they couldn't afford when I offered to help with the down payment 6 months ago. Everyone was there celebrating except me. I wasn't even invited, but that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was discovering this wasn't just a family gathering I'd missed. This was a celebration of something much darker, something that had been planned behind my back for over 2 years, involving money that should have been mine, lies that ran deeper than I ever imagined, and a betrayal so calculating it would destroy our family forever. Hey everyone! Before we dive into this absolutely wild family drama that literally turned my world upside down, I'm curious, where are you watching from? Drop your location in the comments if you're ready for a story about family betrayal that'll make your jaw drop. Smash that like button and hit subscribe, because trust me, you're going to want to follow this journey of discovery, revenge, and the most satisfying justice you've ever seen. Let's get into how one photo exposed the biggest lie of my life. For 28 years I believed I was the golden child. Straight A's through college, MBA from Northwestern, six-figure salary at a consulting firm in Chicago. I was everything my blue-collar parents in Ohio said they wanted their daughter to become. While my older brother Jake struggled with addiction and my younger sister Emma bounced between dead-end jobs and failed relationships, I was the success story they bragged about to neighbors. I sent money home religiously, $500 every month since I graduated, plus extra for emergencies. When Dad's truck broke down, I covered the repairs. When Mom needed dental work, I paid for the crowns. When Jake went to rehab for the third time, guess who footed the bill? I never questioned it, because that's what family does, right? You take care of each other. 6 months ago they called with excitement about finding their dream house. A beautiful 4-bedroom colonial with a wraparound porch in the neighborhood they'd always admired. The asking price was $180,000, and they needed $36,000 for the down payment. They'd been saving for years but were still $15,000 short. Without hesitation I offered to cover the difference. "Oh honey, we couldn't ask you to do that," Mom said, her voice thick with what I thought was gratitude and humility. "You've already done so much for us." "Mom, it's not a problem. I want to help. This is your dream house."
"We'll figure something out, sweetheart."
Family emergencies have been eating into our savings, and with Jake's situation, Dad's voice trailed off with that familiar weight of disappointment. I insisted, practically begged them to let me help, but they refused. They said they'd find another way, maybe wait another year to save more money. I respected their independence, even admired it. My parents had always been proud people who worked hard for everything they had. 2 weeks later they called to say they'd lost the house to another buyer who came in with cash. I felt terrible knowing I could have prevented it. I sent flowers and a care package telling them the right house would come along when the timing was perfect. That was March. In April, Jake supposedly needed emergency money for medical bills after a car accident. $3,000. In May, Emma's apartment flooded and she needed help with temporary housing and replacing her belongings. $2,000. In June, Mom's sister Aunt Carol was diagnosed with cancer, and the family was pooling money for her treatment. I contributed $1,500. Each time I sent the money immediately. No questions asked. No payment plans. Just family taking care of family the way I'd been raised. I worked extra hours, took on additional clients, and cut back on my own expenses to help them through what seemed like an unusually difficult year. Meanwhile, I kept seeing them post on Facebook about family dinners, weekend trips to the lake, and gatherings at what looked like a new house. When I asked about it during our weekly phone calls, they'd brush it off. "Oh, that's Jake's friend's place," or "we're house sitting for the neighbors." I never thought to question it further because why would my parents lie to me? The photo that changed everything came through a group text I wasn't supposed to be included in. Emma had added me accidentally to a family group chat while trying to send pictures to her boyfriend. The message thread showed months of conversations about Marlena's contributions and how to keep the story consistent. But it was the photos that made my blood run cold. There was my family, all of them, standing in front of a beautiful colonial house with a wraparound porch, the same house they'd supposedly lost to another buyer, the house they couldn't afford, the house they didn't need my help to buy because they'd been planning to use my money for it all along. The caption read, "Finally moved into our dream home. So grateful for everyone's help making this possible. Can't wait to host Thanksgiving here. Everyone's help." Everyone except the person who'd actually funded their dream. The group text was a goldmine of betrayal, disguised as family planning. Scrolling through months of messages, I discovered the elaborate scheme my family had orchestrated. Every emergency, every crisis, every desperate call for help had been carefully crafted to extract money from me while keeping me in the dark about their real plans. The first message that made my stomach drop was from April Jake. "Remember if Marlena asks about the car accident you were hit by a drunk driver downtown? Keep the details vague but emotional. We need that medical bill money for the house inspection." My hands shook as I read message after message revealing the truth. There was no car accident. Jake had been working construction jobs under the table for months, earning more money than he'd made in years. The medical bills I'd paid for were actually going straight into their house fund. Emma's flood was equally fictional. Photos in the chat showed her old apartment completely dry and normal. "The flood story is working perfectly," she'd written. "Marlena sent $2,000 without even asking for proof. I almost feel bad, but she makes so much money she probably won't even miss it." The most heartbreaking deception was Aunt Carol's cancer diagnosis. Carol was alive, healthy, and apparently in on the scheme. She'd even helped craft the story about needing money for treatment. "Tell Marlena the chemo is expensive but experimental," Carol had suggested. "Make it sound hopeful but desperate." But the house was the centerpiece of their betrayal. Not only had they never lost it to another buyer, they'd been in contract to purchase it since February, a full month before they'd told me about finding it. They'd calculated exactly how much they needed and orchestrated a series of fake emergencies to extract that exact amount from me. The worst part was reading their justifications. "Marlena makes 6 figures," Dad had written. "She can afford to help her family. This way she feels good about contributing and we get the house we deserve. Win-win." Besides, Mom had added she'd just spend the money on herself anyway. "At least this way it's staying in the family." Jake's response made me want to throw my phone across the room. "She's always acted like she's better than us with her fancy job and her Chicago apartment. About time she paid for looking down on her family." Emma had been the cruelest. "Marlena thinks she's so smart but she falls for every sob story. It's almost too easy. Maybe this will teach her not to be so condescending when she helps us." They'd been laughing at me. My generosity, my love, my desperate desire to be a good daughter and sister, it had all been a joke to them. Every grateful phone call, every tearful thank you, every expression of family love had been an Oscar-worthy performance designed to manipulate me. The group chat revealed they'd been planning a big housewarming party for months. Everyone was invited except me. The excuse they'd planned to give me was that it was just a small, intimate gathering for local family only. They'd decided it would be awkward to have me there since I didn't know about their financial situation and might ask uncomfortable questions about how they'd afforded the house. Reading through their conversations, I realized this wasn't just about money. This was about years of resentment, jealousy, and hurt feelings that had festered into something ugly. They saw my success as a betrayal of where I came from. They interpreted my help as condescension. They'd convinced themselves that I owed them something for having the audacity to build a life different from theirs. The final message in the thread was from Dad, sent just hours before Emma accidentally added me. Party was perfect. Everyone had a great time. Best part is, Marlena will never know how her money really helped the family. What she doesn't know won't hurt her, and we can keep this going as long as we need to, as long as they needed to. This wasn't a one-time deception. This was their new business model. I was their personal ATM, and they'd figured out exactly which buttons to push to keep the money flowing. But they'd made one crucial mistake. They'd underestimated exactly how smart I really was, and they had no idea what I was capable of when the people I loved most in the world betrayed me. They thought they'd gotten away with the perfect crime. They were about to learn how wrong they were. I spent the next week oscillating between rage, heartbreak, and a cold determination I'd never felt before. The family I'd sacrificed for, worried about, and loved unconditionally had been playing me for a fool. But if they thought I was just going to quietly accept this betrayal, they didn't know me at all. My consulting background had taught me that knowledge is power and revenge is a dish best served with documentation. Before I made any moves, I needed to understand the full scope of their deception. I started by reviewing every financial transaction I'd made to my family over the past 2 years. The numbers were staggering. Between the monthly support, emergency funds, and special contributions, I'd sent them over $28,000. That was a down payment on a house, the foundation of a small business, or a year of graduate school. Instead, it had funded their lie and my humiliation. I hired a private investigator, a luxury I could afford thanks to the income they'd been mocking behind my back. Within days, Sarah Chen had uncovered the paper trail that proved everything. Bank records showed the exact dates my money had been deposited and immediately transferred to their house fund. Property records confirmed they'd been the successful buyers all along, closing on the house in April with a down payment that matched my contributions to the penny. But Sarah found something even more damaging: evidence that this wasn't their first rodeo. Jake had been collecting unemployment benefits while working construction jobs off the books. Emma had been claiming rental assistance for her flood damage while living in a perfectly habitable apartment. They'd been running small-scale scams for years, but I'd been their biggest and most reliable target. The most devastating discovery was a social media post from Mom's Facebook account that she'd quickly deleted, but Sarah had managed to capture. It was from the day they'd closed on the house, showing Mom holding the keys with the caption, "Dreams do come true when you have a generous daughter who thinks she's helping with emergencies. Some people are so easy to manipulate." Number blessed. Number new house. Number family first. That post had received 37 likes from extended family members and family friends. 37 people who'd known about the scam and said nothing. My humiliation wasn't just private, it was entertainment for our entire community. While I was gathering evidence, I maintained normal contact with my family. Our weekly phone calls continued as if nothing had changed. It was torture listening to Mom complain about their cramped rental while I knew she was calling from their dream house. Jake continued to milk his fake car accident, even mentioning ongoing physical therapy sessions that didn't exist. The Oscar for Best Performance, however, went to Emma during our Thursday night call. She spent 20 minutes describing her struggle to rebuild after the flood, complete with tears about losing irreplaceable mementos and anxiety about her housing situation. She even asked for additional money for a security deposit on a new place, which turned out to be a weekend trip to Nashville she'd posted about on Instagram. Each conversation strengthened my resolve. They weren't just thieves. They were sadistic enough to enjoy watching me worry about their fabricated problems. They'd turned my love into a weapon against me, and my compassion into their personal entertainment. But knowledge without action is just suffering, and I'd never been the type to suffer in silence. My family had spent months planning their elaborate deception, thinking they were so much smarter than their successful sister. They'd underestimated the skills that had made me successful in the first place: strategic thinking, attention to detail, and the ability to execute complex plans flawlessly. They'd given me the perfect blueprint for revenge by documenting everything in their group chat. Every lie had a timestamp. Every financial transaction had a paper trail. Every family member had participated in or enabled the fraud. They'd been so confident in their superiority that they'd created a comprehensive record of their own crimes. I spent hours crafting my response, consulting with lawyers about the legal implications and financial advisors about asset recovery. This wasn't going to be a simple confrontation or angry phone call. This was going to be a systematic dismantling of their lies, their relationships, and their comfortable assumptions about family loyalty. The plan I developed was elegant in its simplicity and devastating in its thoroughness. They'd used my love against me, so I was going to use their greed against them. They'd manipulated me by making me feel needed, so I was going to make them realize exactly how much they actually needed me. They'd thought they were teaching me a lesson about family loyalty, but they were about to learn what happened when you betrayed someone who'd inherited the same stubborn determination that had built our family's work ethic in the first place. As I finalized the details, I couldn't help but smile. They'd always said I was too smart for my own good. They were about to discover they were absolutely right. Revenge, I learned, is an art form that requires patience, precision, and perfect timing. My family had spent months orchestrating their deception, so I decided their downfall deserved the same level of careful planning. The beauty of their situation was that they'd become dependent on my financial support without realizing it. That dependency was about to become their weakness. My first move was to plant seeds of their own greed. During our next family call, I casually mentioned that I'd received a substantial bonus at work, true actually, and was looking for meaningful ways to invest it. I spoke about wanting to help family members achieve their long-term goals and possibly funding someone's business venture or educational pursuits. The response was immediate and predictable. Within hours, I received individual calls from Jake, Emma, and even my parents, each with carefully crafted stories about new opportunities that required funding. Jake suddenly discovered a passion for opening a motorcycle repair shop. Emma wanted to enroll in cosmetology school. My parents mentioned their dream of starting a small antique business. Each conversation was masterfully manipulative, designed to make me feel like I was investing in their futures rather than simply giving away money. They'd learned from their previous success that I responded better to investment opportunities than emergency requests. They were evolving their scam in real time, becoming more sophisticated predators. I played my part perfectly, expressing enthusiasm and requesting detailed business plans and financial projections. This served two purposes: it bought me time to finalize my plans, and it forced them to put their lies in writing. Every email they sent with fabricated numbers and impossible timelines was another piece of evidence for the collection Sarah and I were building. Meanwhile, I was orchestrating my own business venture, the systematic exposure of their fraud. I created a comprehensive presentation documenting every lie, every financial transaction, and every family member's participation in the scheme. Screenshots of the group chat, bank records, property documents, social media posts, everything organized chronologically to tell the complete story of their betrayal. The presentation wasn't just for my satisfaction. It was evidence for the multiple audiences who would need to understand what had happened. Law enforcement agencies investigating benefit fraud, insurance companies reviewing false claims, family members who'd been kept in the dark about the extent of the deception, and most importantly, the court of public opinion that would ultimately determine whether their behavior had consequences beyond legal ones. I also began documenting their current lifestyle in detail. Social media posts about expensive dinners and weekend trips. New purchases that appeared in family photos. Vacation plans they discussed during our calls. Everything was cataloged and cross-referenced with the timeline of their supposed financial struggles. The contrast between their actual lives and their sob stories was stark and undeniable. The legal consultation phase revealed that their fraud extended beyond simple family manipulation. Jake's unreported income while collecting unemployment benefits was a felony. Emma's rental assistance fraud was a federal crime. My parents' coordination of the scheme potentially qualified as conspiracy. What had started as family drama was actually a criminal enterprise with serious legal consequences. But I wasn't interested in destroying their lives completely. I wanted something more sophisticated, justice that fit the crime. They'd used family bonds as weapons, so their punishment needed to address that betrayal specifically. They'd stolen money, but more importantly, they'd stolen trust, love, and years of genuine concern. The consequences needed to reflect the full scope of their crimes. My opportunity came when they invited me to Thanksgiving dinner. The irony was delicious. They wanted to host the family holiday in the house I'd unknowingly purchased for them, surrounded by the relatives who'd watched me be humiliated. They probably planned to continue their lies throughout dinner, maybe even solicit more money for their fake business ventures. I accepted immediately, offering to contribute to the meal and asking if I could bring a friend who was new to the area and didn't have family nearby. They agreed enthusiastically, probably calculating how to pitch their sob stories to a new audience. They had no idea that my friend would be Sarah, the private investigator equipped with recording equipment and legal documentation. The plan was elegant: arrive early to help with preparations, present my findings during the family gathering when everyone was present, and let them explain themselves to the people whose opinions they actually cared about. No private confrontations they could deny later. No opportunities to craft new lies or manipulate the narrative. Just truth, evidence, and consequences delivered in front of the audience that mattered most to them. As Thanksgiving approached, I found myself almost excited. Not for revenge exactly, but for the moment when pretense would become impossible and reality would finally match the truth. They'd built their happiness on my deception, but happiness built on lies is inherently fragile. I was simply going to help gravity do its work. The only question remaining was how they'd react when their perfect crime unraveled in front of everyone they'd ever lied to. Thanksgiving morning arrived with the crisp clarity that comes with absolute certainty. I'd spent weeks preparing for this moment, and as I drove the familiar route to Ohio, I felt a calm I hadn't experienced since discovering their betrayal. Sarah followed in her own car, carrying the evidence that would dismantle their lies one document at a time. The house was even more beautiful in person than in their stolen photos. The wraparound porch I'd funded gleamed with fresh paint, and the landscaping I'd unknowingly paid for looked professionally maintained. My parents had spared no expense in creating their dream home with my money. Mom greeted me at the door with tears in her eyes, pulling me into a hug that felt like another manipulation. "Oh, honey, it's so good to see you. The family that owns this house is letting us host dinner here since our place is too small. Isn't it gorgeous?" Even in that moment, even knowing I had irrefutable proof of her lies, she continued the deception. The audacity was breathtaking. I smiled and complimented the borrowed house, introducing Sarah as my colleague who was new to the area. Mom welcomed her warmly, probably already calculating how to pitch her sob stories to a fresh victim. Jake arrived with his girlfriend, walking perfectly despite his supposed ongoing injuries from the car accident that never happened. Emma showed up with shopping bags full of expensive clothes, apparently recovered from her devastating flood losses. Aunt Carol looked healthier than I'd seen her in years, cancer-free, because she'd never had cancer to begin with. the extended family gathered throughout the afternoon. Uncles, cousins, family friends, many of whom I recognized from the Facebook likes on Mom's deleted post about manipulating me. They all greeted me with warm smiles and expressions of gratitude for being such a devoted daughter and sister. The cognitive dissonance was overwhelming. During dinner preparation, I listened to them continue their lies with surgical precision. Jake mentioned his ongoing physical therapy appointments. Emma worried aloud about finding a permanent apartment after her flood. Mom stressed about the family's tight budget and how grateful they were for my help during difficult times. Each lie was delivered with Academy Award-worthy sincerity. The dinner itself was a masterpiece of irony. We gathered around a table in the dining room I'd purchased, eating food prepared in the kitchen I'd funded, surrounded by relatives who'd watched them humiliate me. The conversation flowed naturally until Mom stood to make her traditional Thanksgiving speech about gratitude and family bonds. This year, we have so much to be thankful for, she began, looking directly at me. Especially for Marlena, who's always there when her family needs her. Her generosity and love have gotten us through the hardest year we've ever faced. The appreciation murmurs from the family were my cue. I stood slowly, pulling out my phone with a smile that had been waiting weeks to emerge. Speaking of gratitude and family bonds, I said, my voice carrying clearly through the sudden silence, I want to share something that really opened my eyes about our family this year. I opened the group chat screenshots and began reading aloud. Jake, remember, if Marlena asks about the car accident you were hit by a drunk driver downtown, keep the details vague but emotional. We need that medical bill money for the house inspection. The color drained from Jake's face. Emma's fork clattered against her plate. Mom's mouth opened and closed soundlessly like a fish gasping for air. I continued reading their messages, watching as the faces around the table transformed from confusion to shock to horror. Aunt Carol's face turned red when I read her suggestions about crafting the cancer story. The extended family members shifted uncomfortably as they realized they were witnessing the exposure of a massive deception. The best part, I continued pulling up Mom's deleted Facebook post on Sarah's phone, was when Mom posted about having a generous daughter who thinks she's helping with emergencies and called me easy to manipulate. The silence that followed was deafening. 30 people sat frozen, absorbing the reality that the family's golden daughter had been systematically defrauded by the people she loved most. Some family members looked genuinely shocked, apparently unaware of the full scope of the deception. Others couldn't meet my eyes, their complicity exposed. Dad finally spoke, his voice shaking. Marlena, we can explain. Actually, you can't, I interrupted, gesturing to Sarah. This is Sarah Chen, the private investigator I hired to document your fraud. Every transaction, every lie, every piece of evidence has been recorded and verified, including Jake's unreported income while collecting unemployment benefits and Emma's fraudulent rental assistance claims. The word fraud hit the room like a physical blow. Jake stood abruptly, knocking over his chair. Emma began crying. Real tears, this time born of fear rather than manipulation. Mom looked around desperately for support that was no longer coming. You hired a private investigator, Emma whispered. To spy on your own family, to investigate my own family, I corrected. The family that's been lying to me for years, stealing my money and laughing about it behind my back. The family that's been running criminal scams and using me as their personal ATM. Uncle Robert, Dad's brother, spoke up from across the table. Is this true? You've been lying about emergencies to get money from Marlena. The shame on my parents' faces was answer enough. One by one, family members began demanding explanations. How long had this been going on? How much money was involved? Who else knew? The defensive walls they'd built began crumbling as the people whose opinions actually mattered to them started asking the questions I'd been too trusting to ask. As the accusations and denials flew around the table, I felt a strange sense of peace. The truth was finally in the open and the consequences were unfolding exactly as they should. My family had spent months orchestrating my humiliation in private. Now they were experiencing their own humiliation in the public forum they'd chosen for their celebration. The Thanksgiving dinner they'd planned as a victory lap was becoming their confession. The aftermath of that Thanksgiving dinner was swift and decisive. Within hours, my family's carefully constructed narrative collapsed completely. Extended family members who'd been kept partially in the dark about the deception began asking pointed questions about other suspicious situations over the years. Suddenly, patterns of manipulation that had been dismissed as bad luck or poor judgment were revealed as calculated fraud. Uncle Robert and Aunt Linda offered to testify about what they'd witnessed, expressing disgust that Mom and Dad had used family loyalty as a weapon. Several cousins admitted they'd always suspected something was wrong but hadn't wanted to cause family drama by speaking up. The social consequences were immediate and devastating. My parents found themselves isolated from the very community they'd tried to impress with their dream house. The legal consequences followed quickly. Jake's unemployment fraud investigation resulted in criminal charges and a demand for full restitution of benefits received illegally. Emma's rental assistance fraud triggered a federal investigation that revealed she'd been running similar scams in multiple states. The conspiracy charges against my parents were ultimately reduced through plea negotiations, but they faced significant financial penalties and community service requirements. But the real justice came in the form of natural consequences that unfolded over the following months. The house they'd purchased with my money became a financial burden they couldn't sustain without my continued support. The monthly payments, insurance, taxes, and maintenance costs quickly consumed their income. Within 6 months, they were facing foreclosure proceedings. Their fake business ventures collapsed when potential investors, family members they'd hoped to scam next, learned about their history of fraud. Jake's motorcycle shop never opened. Emma's cosmetology school dreams evaporated when her criminal record prevented her from obtaining the required licenses. My parents' antique business existed only in the detailed proposals they'd created to manipulate me. The most satisfying consequence was watching their relationships with their grandchildren suffer. My siblings' kids, who'd been raised to see me as the distant aunt who occasionally sent money, began asking uncomfortable questions about why Grandma and Grandpa's house was being taken away. The innocent honesty of children exposed the long-term damage their lies had caused to multiple generations. Throughout this period, I maintained complete no contact with my immediate family. Every attempt at reconciliation was met with silence. They sent letters, emails, and messages through extended family members, all following the same pattern: partial admissions of wrongdoing, justifications based on their financial struggles, and promises to make things right if I'd just give them another chance. The apologies were as manipulative as their original lies. They never acknowledged the years of systematic deception or took responsibility for the criminal fraud they'd committed. Instead, they focused on their current struggles and how much they missed me, trying to use emotional manipulation to restore the relationship that had enabled their crimes. I did provide one form of assistance during their foreclosure proceedings. Through my attorney, I offered to purchase the house at fair market value, allowing them to avoid bankruptcy and start fresh somewhere they could actually afford. The offer came with one condition: they had to publicly acknowledge their fraud and apologize to every family member they'd lied to about my involvement in their financial situation. They rejected the offer, apparently preferring financial ruin to public accountability. The house was eventually sold at sheriff's auction for significantly less than I'd offered to pay. They moved into a cramped apartment in a different town, starting over with damaged credit and criminal records that would follow them for years. The extended family dynamics shifted permanently. Uncle Robert became the family patriarch, organizing holidays and maintaining traditions. Aunt Carol, ironically, was diagnosed with actual health issues and received genuine support from family members who could finally trust that her needs were real. The cousins who'd remained honest throughout the ordeal found their relationships with each other strengthened by shared commitment to truth and accountability. As for me, I discovered that cutting toxic people from your life, even family members, creates space for healthier relationships to flourish. I built stronger friendships with colleagues, volunteered with local charities, and eventually met someone who appreciated my generosity without trying to exploit it. The money I'd been sending home every month became investments in my own future and contributions to causes I actually believed in. 2 years later, I received a final letter from Mom. She was working as a cashier at a grocery store, living paycheck to paycheck, and facing ongoing health problems she couldn't afford to treat properly. The letter was different from her previous attempts at reconciliation. It contained genuine remorse, detailed acknowledgement of the specific ways she'd hurt me, and no requests for money or renewed contact. She wrote that losing the house had been devastating, but losing her daughter had been worse. She admitted that their resentment of my success had poisoned their love and turned them into people they didn't recognize. She took full responsibility for the fraud and acknowledged that my no-contact stance was completely justified. The letter ended with a simple statement: "I hope someday you can forgive us, but I understand if you never can. You deserved better from your family, and I'm sorry we failed you so completely." I read the letter several times, feeling sadness rather than anger for the first time since discovering their betrayal. But forgiveness doesn't require reconciliation, and understanding someone's motivations doesn't excuse their actions. I filed the letter away and continued building the life I'd chosen without them. Sometimes people ask if I regret how I handled the situation or if I miss having a relationship with my family. The truth is that discovering their betrayal was devastating, but it also freed me from a lifetime of manipulation and exploitation. They taught me that blood relationships don't guarantee loyalty or love, but they also taught me to value the people who choose to be honest and genuine in their connections with me. Family karma is real, but it's not mystical. It's simply the natural consequence of treating the people who love you with calculated cruelty. My parents and siblings created their own justice by destroying the relationships that could have supported them through genuine difficulties. They chose greed over gratitude, manipulation over honesty, and temporary financial gain over permanent family bonds. The house they schemed to obtain became the symbol of their downfall. The money they stole couldn't buy them the happiness they thought it would provide. The lies they told so cleverly eventually required more energy to maintain than they were worth. They got exactly what they deserved: each other and the consequences of their choices. So, what do you think? Have you ever experienced family betrayal that made you question everything you thought you knew about the people closest to you? Have you had to choose between forgiveness and justice when someone you loved hurt you? Deliberately drop your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to hear your stories about family karma and standing up for yourself even when it's painful. And if this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe for more real-life drama that proves truth really is stranger than fiction. Share this with someone who needs to hear that they're not obligated to enable toxic behavior just because it comes from family members. Thank you for taking this journey with me, and for understanding that sometimes the most loving thing you can do is refuse to participate in your own abuse. Remember that you deserve relationships built on honesty, respect, and genuine care. Don't let anyone convince you that family loyalty means accepting betrayal, and never underestimate the power of consequences to teach people lessons they refuse to learn through kindness. Life has a way of balancing the scales, but sometimes you have to help gravity do its work. Until next time, keep standing up for yourselves and holding people accountable for their choices, family included.